in my own therapy, it started to reveal itself that there was a limited self-love because I was operating out of a place of fear and guilt. And there was a point that I just got tired of telling myself that it was going to be a constant chase. And I no longer had to chase.
Welcome back to Smarter Wealth. This is the podcast where we talk about real life. We talk about real change and how to navigate it all without losing our minds. My guest today is Beth Tellez, an experienced clinical social worker and therapist who has spent years helping people navigate trauma, relationships, and mental health challenges. Let's get into it.
Let's go.
Yay, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to sit here and visit and get to know you better.
Me too. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
So we thought that you would be the perfect guest to talk about practicing radical self-love and what that actually means. I'm interested in your perspective, from a therapist professional perspective, but also you're a mom and a woman and a business owner, and that perspective might be different because that's your personal experience. So tell me first from the therapist perspective.
Well, clinically, I cannot consider radical self-love before we have the conversation about radical self-acceptance.
Awesome. Okay.
And that's not something that I learned personally until very recently.
Okay.
And we can thank perimenopause for that and taking the filter off.
Let's just take a moment to say thank you, perimenopause, because all too often we hate on it.
We don't need a moment of
give
silence.
it lots of shame.
We just need a moment.
Yes.
Yeah, we just need a moment. It ripped every layer, every filter, every narrative that I've been telling myself over and over again. It just ripped it off. I woke up on my 50th birthday and it was gone. I'm not sure everyone's a fan of it. That's okay.
Yeah.
That there in and of itself is a testament that, we can thank perimenopause.
Yeah. So
tell me, us take the layers off.
So then what did that self-acceptance literally overnight change, or?
I think that I had been on a journey to exploring all of who I was through my own therapy over the years prior. But there was something about just waking up on that mile marker birthday that said, enough is enough. Yeah. It was probably feeling a little bit of my mortality, and a little bit of, okay, here we are right at the midpoint. But I was able to, just put my feet on the ground that day. And I thought, no more.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing, and it can get really loud up here.
Sure.
I'm really tired of hearing what I've been telling myself all these years. And I'm a firm believer that what I believe about myself, that will manifest in other people's experiences with me as well.
Sure.
So it was time to clean that up. And I did pretty radically. So the self-acceptance is not an easy task. So I don't want to pretty that up.
Sure.
This is an opportunity for us to evaluate everything that has shaped the way in which we see ourselves in the world. That can be not so fun sometimes.
Sure.
Because we have to take a look at the historical influences, our parents, our family, the experiences that we have had along the way. And at some point then those voices become our own voice. And then it is we who tell ourselves a story about ourselves. So we have to begin to chip away at those narratives once we identify it.
Sure.
It's a process.
So would you also say, like, in your experience, that first awareness of self-acceptance was, holy shit, I'm 50. I'm here I am breathing as long as the day is long, and I haven't accomplished what I thought I would. I may not be where I think I should be. Did you ever have any of those self-negative thoughts about I should be more? I should have.
Well, I
done
have that
more
every
by
day.
now. Oh, okay.
I have that every day, and I can thank ADHD for that. That real critical sense of self that I've not had enough hours in the day to to achieve what I needed to achieve, or I could have done more, I could have done better. So that's a constant narrative that's flowing in the background. And I have to learn how to be in charge of that volume.
Yeah.
I'm doing the knob for all the young kids that don't understand turning down a knob. And so what I think mine more was I was tired of telling myself that I had to overextend out to others to make sure that they knew my value and my worth, that I had to, lest they forget. And so, and that's a historical message. And being a therapist, I'm not my own therapist. So all of the knowledge goes out the window, you know, when you're having to use your own introspect. And so in my own therapy, it started to reveal itself that there was a limited self-love because I was operating out of a place of fear and guilt, lest they forget my value and my worth. And there was a point that I just got tired of telling myself that it was going to be a constant chase. And I no longer had to chase. And so I stopped, and I've loved it. And it was radical, and it was obvious to others and to myself. And it was freeing and fun. And, you know, I was a little sassy in that transition and unapologetic. And I'm still absolutely unapologetic.
Good.
And I feel more myself than probably ever before. Not that it doesn't creep back up.
Sure.
Okay. This is a core narrative of who I have told myself I was based on the other voices that shaped that. So it's ready. It's right there ready for me to sort of marinate back into that.
So that also leans into the negative self-talk and the tapes, right, that we play in our brain. And just to level set too, our thoughts are not necessarily reality. They're just stuck in our head. They don't become reality until they come out of our mouth.
Absolutely. They feel real. They feel true. I often tell people thoughts are not threats and feelings are not facts. They feel threatening and they feel like facts, but they aren't.
That is a very powerful statement. So feelings are not facts, because I think we live in our emotions so much. And what do we say? Our perception is our reality. So that is true, but not true, is what I'm hearing you say, because our feelings are not fact.
Feelings are natural, and feelings are organic, and feelings are a part of the human experience, but they aren't necessarily true to our current situation. I can feel as though I'm the worst mom on the planet. That doesn't make it true.
Right.
But the feelings can become so strong that I can believe them and then operate in them.
Yeah. So how do you take that self-awareness moment in that feeling of self-doubt and negative tape to alter that thought pattern?
So I think once we identify it, which I think is the first key, we need to recognize that there's a pattern that exists in our thought processes to begin with. Once we identify those, we have to start challenging them. So this is where I start to steal from Jeffrey Young, and he is the father of schema therapy. And he wrote a book called Reinventing Your Life. And I love to take people through that journey of recognizing the process is simple in terms of talking points. The actual rollout is a journey. That can
it's always
years.
The hard part, right?
That can take years. Jeffrey Young teaches us to look at what are these thoughts rooted in. Okay, so we have to look at the historical influences that shape the way in which we see ourselves, the way in which we see ourselves in the world, the way we see ourselves in relationships. It's critical that we take a look at it. It influences us, right?
Absolutely.
That is our core foundation of who we are, based on what has shaped us in childhood. Once we take a look at that and we see what these things are rooted in, we have to look at how does it show up in adulthood today. Many times, according to his work, we are using old tools from childhood that worked and served for us at some point. or we would not have used them. People pleasing, subjugating our own needs and wants and desires, perfectionism. These tools worked for us to get us through, or we would not have utilized them.
Right.
But are they still relevant for us today? And if they're not, then we can take a look at that. And if they no longer serve us, we can lay those down. We can learn to pick up new tools that are healthier and more efficient, more productive for our lives. That's easier said than done.
Sure.
Because the old tools, they fit so well in our hands. They're so worn. They're ours. And
it's
so
the comfort level, right?
It's the laying down of those and then the picking up of the new tools. And then the third part is to challenge the narrative that we tell ourselves that bring on those strong emotions. What can I say to make a case against the things that no longer serve me? So if I find that I'm a subjugator or a people pleaser because that's a trauma response, then what do I know to be actually true? And so you just start, carving away at those core thought processes about yourself. And then once you start realizing, I actually have evidence to counter those beliefs. What do I actually know to be true? And then before you know it, we're turning down those intense volumes of those strong emotions, those really loud narratives, and we no longer have the proof or the evidence that we thought we did.
Sure. And we can be more aware of when it's starting or when it's happening.
And then once you catch it, what do I know to be true? Every time. And then now we have new muscle memory. Now we are learning and relearning to retrain our brain. And thank goodness it's a doable thing.
Yes. So that makes me think about self-worth then also, right? Like that's not a term we've used yet, but as you go through that journey, having if you struggle with self-worth or like, I think a scarcity mindset and an abundance mindset can kind of go hand in hand there, right? So I want to be careful with the word deserve, because deserve doesn't mean that you deserve things, right? Like entitlement deserved.
Right.
But as a human right, as a human, you deserve to feel confident in self and have anything that you want or desire.
Well, and I think that is something that it's a part of the process for total self-love and self-acceptance. You have to first have buy-in that your worth and your value is inherent. And we tend to believe this wholeheartedly for others, for our friends, for our daughters, for our family. We do believe that their worth and their value is inherent, but the rules are different for us.
Sure.
And so we have to call that out and recognize that. Once we recognize that, once we have buy-in, and this is part of the process, and it is not easy for a lot of people to believe that the rules indeed are not different for themselves. We cannot make up rules. It's a made-up rule that you are deserving, but I am not.
It's a made-up rule.
Because of it's a made-up rule, and we are good at it. It's a human experience. Once we recognize that we're actually making that up, and it's not true, feels true, but it's not true,
but it's not true.
Your feelings aren't facts. Then we're able to do the work. But you cannot even begin this journey until you have buy-in to that. So a lot of this might be taking time to explore, why do I not feel that it is for me? Why am I able to do this, so freely for a friend, but not for myself? You start looking at things like shame and the story that it tells you. Then you have to go back to those core historical narratives and how they shaped you. Until you have buy-in that is inherent, this won't stick.
So do you see that sometimes, women or men, that we're not ready to face this question sometimes until we find ourselves in a precarious place or in a trauma setting at some point in our life, maybe not childhood, or do you find people that are just sick and tired of being sick and tired?
So in my little part of the world, that is probably where I meet people. The trauma experiences are almost, and I'll be careful the way I use this word, easier to navigate because they're familiar. I don't have to like it. I don't have to like my trauma response of people pleasing. I don't have to like my trauma response of avoidance. I don't have to like my trauma response of overextending myself, always saying yes. I don't have to like that, but I know it. And so I can navigate it. So that's almost easier, if you will. What's more challenging is to realize how exhausted you are in that process, because it was never intended to work that way to begin with. If my extending out for others or my avoidance or what have you, fill in the blank, comes at my expense, that's dysfunction. I tend to find people, and a lot of times women, men my age, we're tired because it no longer serves us. And I say serves us, meaning we wouldn't do it if some way, somehow we benefited. So even if it's an unhealthy dynamic, to some extent, we benefit. It gets us out of hard conversations. It gets us from getting close to people, whatever the tool is.
Sure.
We utilize it for a reason, but then it has a shelf life and it no longer works the way in which it used to. And I usually find people in therapy there when they realize it's not working anymore. They don't know what it is. They don't know what to do next. They just know that something's no longer working and they're tired. And then when we get to name it and we get to identify what it is, and then we get to normalize it as a human experience,
change happens.
big exhale, ready to get the work done.
Yeah.
Love it.
So what would be a piece of homework you might give a client or patient, a client, in that setting? What do they do at home? If you are going through that practice, and as you said, it can take a very long time. And I'm sure there's a lot of work done in quiet settings behind closed doors, right? Maybe even in fetal position on the ground sometimes.
Myself and the client. Yes. Yes.
What would be a piece of homework or an actual tangible step to start that process?
Well, and I'll just, I was laughing about being in the fetal position, but I will say, you'd be surprised. There are tears. Yes. Because we can say hard things. Okay. But that doesn't come without emotion. That's a very natural part of it. Also, there are tears of relief.
Yeah.
Sometimes even tears of joy. Because to stand in your truth, what a beautiful thing. And for someone to give you permission to do that and then kind of hang out in that messy space with you, what a gift, right? For both people. Definitely not quiet in my office. Lots of cackling happening. Might use humor as a nice little, comic relief, but then we go back in.
That's refreshing too.
I live there. Yeah. So it's I want to normalize the therapy experience too, about if there's some stuckness surrounding this topic and you need some extra support, it can really be a great way to dig into those hard topics, move through them, navigate through them, learn how to put those healthy tools back in. So the step that someone can use at home, I'm going to steal from Kristen Neff, and she's the mother of self-compassion work. And you can get on her website. There's an audio version. There's the written word version where you can go through a simple exercise. And this exercise for me helps me reset and regulate myself.
Oh, okay.
So she does 3 fundamental pieces. The first one is mindfulness. She takes a look at what is going on right now. So that's just taking a quick look-see at my head and my heart. And then she says, put your hand on your heart. So you're trying to connect with yourself. Just get present. What is going on right now? What is it that I need to know? The next thing she says is to normalize the experience. Right now, this is my moment of suffering, or this is something that I'm going through right now. And then reminding the brain, everyone has these moments. Everyone suffers. This is my moment, but everyone suffers. Now I'm reminded I'm not alone. Now I'm reminding this is a human experience. Now I don't have to kick in that narrative about who I am in this situation.
Yeah.
Right? Once I do that, then I'm able to use kindness and say things such as, may I be kind to myself in this moment. I will see myself through. It's okay to slow this down. Mm-hmm. What a beautiful thing to be able to just recognize what's happening. Mm-hmm. Notice I didn't embrace it. I didn't fight with it. Yeah. I also didn't avoid naming it, saying it, what have you. Mm-hmm. I just recognized it was there. I allowed myself to be kind to myself, and then I can move on through. It's a beautiful gift to yourself. And you can do that anywhere. Yes. In your car, at work, in a restroom.
In the bathroom stall.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful. I think, all too often we're told pause, breathe. And while pausing and breathing is a part of that, being able to give yourself room, number one, and number two, allowing yourself to say something positive to yourself. It's like you're letting that positive narrative run down your back or over your shoulders.
And it's okay to know that even if you don't fully have buy-in, start saying it. Stop with the negative narrative that is so familiar. Begin to say the things that feel janky and uncomfortable, because in order to have buy-in, I have to begin hearing it in my own voice.
Yeah. That's a great point, because there's so many people, I think, that are in tough relationships. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's a parent, maybe it's even a friend that you weirdly admire but talks negative to you. So when you are hearing those negative things from other people because they're not treating you well, how do you sometimes then differentiate what someone else's opinion of you, because they're telling you, they're making sure that they think you're a POS, or that you're not pretty enough, or that you're not good enough, and you're believing it.
Well, I think this is where you get back to find out what your core beliefs are about yourself in the world. So you just actually highlighted some well-known literature that has been around for ages in the research about navigating to the familiar. And so I think it's really important that people understand that whatever was normalized for us in childhood, we will navigate to that in adulthood. Okay, so if I'm raised in a home of chaos and dysfunction, the unknown, I will navigate to relationships that recreate those dynamics in adulthood. I don't have to like those dynamics. I just have to know how to navigate them.
Yeah.
And so I think the biggest piece is to recognize that is a pattern. It's research based. It is there. We do the things. Look at people's careers. You'll have an understanding of, why did they navigate to be a helping professional?
Yeah.
My own therapist called me out. I'm still a little bitter, but she wasn't wrong. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have to look at navigating to the familiar, and are we recreating dynamics in our relationships today that mirror or mimic what we experienced in childhood? Once we understand that, maybe I don't continue to engage in someone who tells me a story about who I am. The words are familiar. Yeah. I have heard them before. I might even hear them in my own voice now. But once I start doing my work and recognizing I'm just recreating the wounds from my mother's critical voice or from my father's anger. Once I recognize that those are being played out in unhealthy relationships, then I start having choice.
Yeah. That's fascinating. There was an experience that I did in actually it was a small group at my church, and it was just becoming really being more open-hearted and open to your own spirituality and how you can live that in your life. But one of the exercises I found fascinating, and I'm interested if you do something similar in the therapeutic realm. I found it shattering, actually. But we looked at our personal life. We more or less took our family tree and we looked at our life. We looked at our parents. We looked at our grandparents, our aunts and uncles, our great grandparents, as far back as we would know. And while we highlighted some positivity, we really focused on the negative, which at first felt like, good God, like this is ugly. But seeing on paper a historical, true narrative, right? Not just a narrative I'm telling myself or that I may have experienced, but seeing the divorce, seeing the addiction, seeing the very strong hardships or sickness that had happened on both sides of my family. And then due to divorce and remarriage, and how those people dealt with it or lack thereof, right? And how that could be how that may have influenced my parents, which is influencing me personally, but maybe even my parenting.
No doubt.
And at that time, I was newly divorced. So living in all of that acceptance of why my life isn't the life I planned, and who slapped me in the face all of a sudden to realize and wake up that, holy shit, I turned 40 and divorced, literally signed divorce papers on my 40th birthday.
Nice.
And but at that time, I was open to needing the awareness of, how did I actually get here? I thought I was in control of my life. Clearly, I wasn't. Those pieces of the puzzle, I never paid any attention to. I didn't think they really made a big deal or mattered.
Can you see, though, that once you recognize that this was bigger than you, that we can step away then from the stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves, right?
Yeah.
That's the radical self-love.
Yeah.
If we recognize that these historical generational norms, and they are normalized, right? So how would you have known?
Right.
Until you had an exercise that allowed you just, to stop, evaluate, name things, identify patterns, the generational norms that then impacted you and shaped the way in which you saw yourself. Yeah. I saw a reel several weeks ago, and the woman speaking said, we marry the unhealed parts of ourselves. And that I know.
That might be 5 bricks in the face.
I've done that too.
Yeah.
Yes, I have done that as well. And so many of us have.
Yeah.
And if you think about that, that is congruent with the literature that we navigate to the familiar. Now, here's another one. Don't fall out of your chair.
Put your seatbelt on.
Here, are you ready? In that familiarity that we navigate to, we find safety. So if I navigate to chaos, I find safety there.
Which is what...
Think about that.
Yeah.
Which is why generational norms are gifted to the next generation and the next generation, because my humble belief is we're all just trying to keep ourselves safe.
Right.
And so if in my fight flight, if that keeps me safe, so be it. It might keep my world small. Right. It might not allow me to connect with other people, but I'm safe. If my shut down, avoidant, denial keeps me safe, okay. It might limit my life. It's just a price I have to pay. Or so we tell ourselves.
Right.
We navigate to the familiar, and in that familiar, we find safety. And that's why this is not an easy journey, but it's so worth it once we recognize those patterns.
And you don't need to be 50 to start, right? How about we
wait on perimenopause. Don't wait.
Gift of self and do this young.
Right.
Yes.
And that's why I get super excited and have to really kind of contain myself in session, because when I'm working with younger women, early 20s, I actually find myself even getting a little jealous.
Mm.
Man, I wish I had known this.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had been sitting with someone who helped me name things and identify things and interrupt patterns and break my own norms.
Yeah.
Wow, the things I could have saved myself from,
Right.
but that's how I learn.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
It's each individual path. It is our path.
But I'm trying to now help my daughter see the patterns, name them. Let's, I may be passing down some things, but I won't pass down that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. She's not even 18 years old yet. So, we're hoping that that's how, that's how those generational norms are broken.
Yeah. And just giving space in your home and with your daughter to be able to talk about the hard things and that she's not wrong for feeling this way. Or maybe as a mom, hey, mom and daughter can talk about these things.
Talk about hard things.
Yeah.
We can. The other thing is that I learned in my little Gen X self is that people can have an emotional experience and that's okay. So I can have these conversations with my daughter at the time when my parents were alive and having conversations with them about difficult familial patterns. If people had emotional experiences about that, that's okay. It didn't mean that the conversation was wrong. It just meant that it was hard.
Sure.
And that hard doesn't mean wrong. Huge.
That's good.
Huge.
Yeah. Because sometimes it feels hard. Because it feels hard, it feels wrong sometimes.
And we default them back into that protection.
Yeah.
How do I need to get safe? I'll say whatever you need to hear.
Right.
Okay. And then I'll be safe. Or I'll find a way out. Okay. And then I'll be safe.
Yeah.
Or
I just want to please you, whoever I'm talking to. Yes. I want you to like me. I want you to feel good. So
I want you to see my value. I want you to see my worth.
Yeah.
So I will subjugate my need in this moment and then we'll move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what about the shovers, the people who are really struggling with not even identifying emotion, that they just shove it. They shove it all. We all know it starts to erupt and it comes out in very various places. But they just keep shoving and they just keep shoving.
It's a survival mode.
Yeah.
It's the fight, flight, the freeze, the fawn. There's two little hidden F's in that. The shutter downers, those who utilize avoidance as a tool, it's just survival mode. We're all just trying to keep ourselves safe. Once we recognize that that's no longer serving us, and unfortunately, sometimes we learn those things through hurt relationships or missed opportunities, or it's backfired on us, because it's unhealthy, it's dysfunctional. Once we recognize that that's a thing that we do, and this is where therapy could come in, where we can understand, why do we even do it? Again, go back to the root cause. Look at how it shows up into your life in adulthood. How do I make a case against it? Yeah. And then start practicing. And be ready for that to look messy. And it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be ready to do the work, right?
And otherwise, you have to be willing to let it look ridiculous. Yeah. Okay? Because remember, we're interrupting decades and decades in our own life, but then generational patterns before us. Yeah. We have to let it look like a messy ball of yarn. And be okay with it. That's radical self-love.
Yeah.
All of it. That I stand in all of my truth, not just the pretty, shiny, sparkly parts.
That's exactly right. So what would you tell someone who feels like they can go it alone and, therapy is still has some negative connotation to it? I think there's a lot of beauty in our culture today in the sense that even 10 years ago, it wasn't something people openly discussed. And as today, I think people are very open about having a counselor or a therapist or someone that they can talk to. What would you share with
We
someone
can thank
who's
the Gen
avoiding
Zers for that. So I will give credit to
that?
the younger
They don't get a lot of
folks.
credit
Yeah, no, we're
sometimes
gonna.
on
I
things.
have one. I'm raising one. So yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a little hard on them, but we have to give them credit that they're normalizing the conversation surrounding mental health. Also, COVID sort of blew
Oh, yeah.
things out of the water, and I think it forced the conversation to have support, whether I felt that it was taboo or not previously. I'm now finding myself in a place where I'm at a critical spot. And so, in an unfortunate global situation, I think came, um, uh, it was an eye opener for so many people who otherwise were, I'm fine, we're fine, everything's fine.
Yeah.
We're not fine.
Right.
Okay. I think that if someone's not ready for therapy, they can continue to utilize those simple techniques to regulate their bodies, find out what's going on, name it. There's so much power in naming a feeling, in naming an experience. There's so much power in recognizing a pattern of thinking about myself and who I am in the world. So there are a lot of things that we can do, I think, individually on our own, independently, and you can see growth there.
Sure.
I think hanging out with people who are also doing the same thing, allow them to influence you, allow them to ask the hard questions, find the safe relationships.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if there's some stuckness, I think that's when we have to say, I can go and give it a try. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
If I don't like it, I can either look for someone else, or I can ask a friend, get a recommendation. I think that at least in our clinic, we try really hard to normalize therapy as a conversation like this.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be something to be feared. It's very important to remember you don't have to re-experience anything. We've already lived it.
Yeah.
If we reference anything about those historical root causes, we're just reflecting back on something that you've already experienced, a memory, a feeling, a bodily sensation. But we're not having to relive. So perhaps it's not as scary as my brain wants to tell me it is. Remember, we're wired for safety.
Yeah.
And so many times we'll try to find a way out rather than trying to find a way in. And we just have to call it the BS on that.
We try to find a way out when we need to find a way in.
Right.
And we have to, what'd you say? Say that again. We have to
call out the BS.
Call out the BS.
Challenge the narrative that I'm telling myself and find out my motivation. Why am I telling myself not to connect with a professional or with a friend or with a safe relationship? Why? Because safety is the primitive, the primary need. At the end of the day, I just need to keep myself safe. But what if I challenge that narrative that it's not unsafe to lean into a safe relationship with someone? What if I leaned into support and encouragement? What if that wasn't unsafe?
Right.
And that requires taking a risk and learning to trust yourself and learning to trust others. And that might be really challenging for people who weren't taught to do so.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible.
Well, I think I have some things to walk away with today that I will be practicing myself.
Excellent.
Yes.
It's doable.
So, Beth, I just want to leave with one question. Talking through all of these things that we can give ourselves freedom to live into our truth and not be handcuffed by the need of safety. And the idea that we also don't need to be 50 to start the process.
Right.
So you have a teenage daughter, so things that you might tell her, what also would you go back and tell your much younger self that may have helped you?
If I had had the understanding and the awareness to name things, then I would tell myself there's so much power there. there's so much freedom there that you don't actually have to continue to repeat the patterns that were modeled for you. You don't have to believe the things that are now being heard in your own voice.
Yeah.
That you can understand that these things are bigger than you and that you're worth the work.
Yeah. You are enough, period. Yeah.
Radical self-love.
Radical self-love. Beth, thank you. It's been a joy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate this conversation.
Absolutely.